I'm Derek. My wife once told me she owes me nothing. This is what happened after I decided to believe her. A psychological thriller about love, control, and the silence that kills everything. Subscribe for more dark Reddit stories and real-life confessions. My wife said, I owe you nothing. So I showed her what happens when I stop being obligated to love and serve her. It was the kind of sentence that doesn't echo, because the silence after it is too thick to let sound survive. She said it calmly, over the rim of a glass of white wine. The late light of afternoon made the rim glow gold, as if she were drinking sunlight and contempt in equal measure. I remember the exact angle of her wrist, the way her hair fell over her shoulder. It was one of those small moments that seem trivial until they start burning themselves into the mind like acid through paper. I didn't respond. I just watched her. There was no reason to speak. The statement had already rewritten the contract between us. We'd been married for 9 years. 9 years of meticulous civility, good dinners, holidays we photographed for friends we didn't like, and a house that looked like an exhibit of wealth disguised as restraint. When we argued, it was elegant. No shouting, no breaking things. We weaponized tone. We negotiated with silence. Our love was a series of contracts. Who gives, who yields, who wins. But that night, something shifted. I owe you nothing. It wasn't just a declaration, it was an erasure. And it demanded an answer, not in words, but in kind. I didn't sleep. I listened to her breathing beside me. Too regular. Too peaceful. She could sleep after saying that. That was the first betrayal. In the dark, I counted the seconds between her breaths. It was a habit I developed years ago, when I still thought I could read her through patterns, small tells, gestures, pauses. I thought intimacy was observation. Now I see it was surveillance. By morning, I decided to give her exactly what she asked for. Nothing owed. No obligation. Just observation. She noticed the change by the third day. At breakfast, I didn't ask about her meetings. I didn't refill her coffee. I didn't look up when she left the table. She said, "You're quiet lately." I said, "I'm listening." To what? She didn't ask. That was mistake number 1. We used to share an office, not physically, but emotionally. She'd bring me fragments of her world, office gossip, mild frustrations, the theater of her professional life. She liked me to play the audience, nodding at the right times, offering intelligent sympathy. Now I gave her none of it. I let her stories die mid-sentence. At first, she tried to revive them with charm, a laugh, a small touch on my arm. Then, with irritation. Then, with distance. I documented each stage in my mind, like a scientist recording the decay of a sample. There's a peculiar peace in withholding. You start to see the architecture of dependence, who needs to be seen, who needs to be heard, and who can endure the void. By the second week, she began performing for ghosts. Her laughter got louder. Her makeup sharper. She started wearing perfume again, though she hadn't bothered in months. It wasn't for me. That was obvious. But I didn't ask who it was for. Curiosity is a gift. I owed her none. I had an office in the house, a minimalist room with a wall of books and a desk too clean to suggest real work. From there, I could hear her phone calls in the kitchen. Her voice dropped when she spoke to someone, soft, practiced, careful. That tone women use when they want to seem vulnerable but in control. I recognized it. She'd used it on me once. I didn't investigate. Not yet. I wasn't interested in evidence. I was interested in pressure. The first test was silence. The second was freedom. I told her I'd be traveling for a week. No reason, no explanation. Just a statement. She hesitated before asking, "Where? Does it matter?" I said. Her smile froze halfway. "Of course not. That night, she searched my briefcase while I pretended to sleep. I watched her in the reflection of the dark window, her careful hands, the tiny flicker of her phone flashlight. She found nothing. Because there was nothing to find. The trip didn't exist. The next morning, I left anyway. Not far, just to a hotel downtown. A quiet suite with a view of the river. I didn't contact her for 3 days. When I returned, she greeted me with a kind of forced composure, as if she'd been rehearsing detachment. "How was it?" she asked. "Uneventful," I said. She nodded. Then, too quickly, "You could have called." I smiled. "You said you owe me nothing." That was when I saw it, the first crack behind her eyes. Fear, or perhaps recognition. The house changed after that. Rooms began to feel like stages we no longer shared. We occupied separate corners, spoke in rehearsed phrases. Her laughter when friends visited was slightly too bright, too sharp. When they left, she avoided my gaze. We became actors aware of the audience even when it was gone. I started writing notes, not to her, but about her. Observations, hypotheses. Like, she blinks faster when lying. Or, she touches her ring when she's afraid. It was less like marriage and more like an experiment in erosion. By month's end, I found the messages. Not dramatic, not incriminating. Just small exchanges, a colleague perhaps. Witty. Familiar. Too familiar. I didn't confront her. Instead, I started testing for guilt. When I asked casual questions about her day, she hesitated. When I didn't ask, she overcompensated. People reveal themselves most clearly when they're trying to hide. One evening, she suggested dinner out. Just us. A peace offering. We sat in a quiet restaurant, candles and marble and low jazz. She smiled too much. "I've missed this," she said. "What exactly?" I asked. Her eyes flickered. "Us." I looked at her and realized how little of us was left. She was performing intimacy, hoping I'd play along. But I was studying her the way one studies a painting, admiring the technique while knowing the artist is a fraud. When the check came, I didn't reach for it. She hesitated, then paid. A small rebellion, or a confession of guilt, I couldn't tell. That was the beauty of it. Later that night, she came into my office. "I don't like who you've become," she said. "I haven't become anyone," I said. "I've just stopped pretending." She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. That restraint, that tiny collapse, told me everything. She wasn't angry. She was afraid. Not of me, but of what my indifference revealed about her. People like her need reflection, someone to confirm their charm, their worth, their illusion of control. Take that away, and they begin to unravel. I found her crying once, quietly, in the bathroom. The sound was almost polite. She stopped when she saw me in the doorway. "I'm fine," she said. "I didn't ask," I replied. She stared at me, searching for something in my face, pity maybe, recognition. There was none. That was the moment she understood the scale of what she'd broken. I started sleeping in the guest room. She didn't protest. But the next morning, she brought me coffee, a habit she'd abandoned months ago. A gesture of peace or control. It didn't matter. I didn't drink it. In public, we were immaculate. At dinner parties, we held hands, smiled at the right jokes, made references to shared memories. No one saw the rot beneath. That was our talent, presentation. But in private, we spoke less each day. The silence grew heavy enough to bend the walls. Then one night, she asked, "Do you still love me?" Her voice was small, but steady. She already knew the answer. I said nothing. She nodded, almost relieved. "I thought so," she whispered. And then, Quietly, she added, "Neither do I." But her eyes said otherwise. They always do. She said she owed me nothing. So I decided to test what that really meant. When obligation disappears, what holds people together? Habit? Fear? Vanity? Or the quiet terror of being seen without purpose? I wanted to know. And I had time, money, and patience, the perfect tools for an experiment. At first, she mistook my silence for depression. She spoke softly, as if afraid to startle something fragile. I let her think that. It's easier to observe pity than anger. She began making small gestures. Dinner waiting when I came home, a note on the counter. I ignored them, logged each one mentally. Attempted restoration of routine, 8:14 p.m. result, null. I'd become a collector of her efforts. Each action cataloged, weighed, measured. She didn't realize I was documenting the extinction of her sincerity. I started working from home more often. I told her the markets were volatile, that my company needed discretion. In truth, I just wanted proximity without participation. From my study, I could hear the rhythms of her day, the clatter of dishes, the murmur of phone calls, the restless pacing when she thought no one could hear. She'd pause sometimes at my door. I could sense it by the shift of air, but never knock. She was waiting for permission I'd stopped giving. At night, I'd walk through the house after she'd gone to bed. There's something intimate about empty rooms. They remember conversations even after people forget them. The scent of her perfume lingered in the hallway, faint as a ghost. I traced my hand along the banister and wondered when the house had stopped feeling like ours. Maybe it never had. Maybe I'd just been a guest she tolerated because I made life comfortable. Now comfort had become a weapon. One evening I found her standing by the kitchen window, staring at the garden. She didn't turn when I entered. "You used to water the roses," she said. "They still grow," I replied. She exhaled. "Not well." I wanted to tell her that nothing thrives when it's only tended out of duty. But I stayed silent. She didn't deserve the explanation. Days blurred into patterns. She tried new tactics, politeness, charm, accusation. Each one failed. The less I reacted, the more desperate her movements became. Small outbursts of control disguised as care. She bought new furniture for the living room. Changed the curtains. Asked my opinion on things she no longer cared about. I offered no resistance. Let her decorate her own cage. By the third month, she began spending longer hours away from home. Work, she said. Social events. Dinners. She wanted me to ask where, with whom. I didn't. That was the real punishment, indifference. When she returned, she'd leave her heels by the door, her perfume stronger, her laughter rehearsed. I'd look up from my book, meet her eyes for a second, and then return to reading. It drove her mad. The absence of jealousy was worse than any accusation. I knew she was seeing someone. Not because of evidence, but because of rhythm, the subtle shifts of guilt. People in love become predictable. People in deceit become careful. She started locking her phone, leaving it face down on the table, deleting messages before bed. It didn't anger me. It intrigued me. Every lie requires maintenance. Maintenance reveals weakness. And weakness invites manipulation. I invited her to dinner one night, rare enough to surprise her. She dressed beautifully, too beautifully. A silk dress, red, understated jewelry. Her performance was flawless. Over wine, I asked about her day. She spoke cautiously, measuring each word. I let her finish before saying quietly, "You don't have to lie, you know." Her fork paused. "What do you mean?" I smiled. "You said you owe me nothing. That includes honesty." Her eyes darted away. "You're imagining things." Perhaps. That single word hung between us, heavy as a confession. We finished dinner in silence. When the waiter brought the check, she reached for it. I let her. That night, she didn't come to bed. I found her asleep on the couch, phone clutched in her hand. A message thread half hidden on the screen. I can't tonight. He'll notice. I didn't touch it. Evidence was unnecessary. The truth had already taken root in her fear. In the morning, she acted as though nothing had happened. Coffee. Small talk. Routine. But her voice trembled slightly when she asked, "Are you working from home today?" "Yes." "Good." She forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She was terrified of what I might do. That was the irony. I wasn't planning anything. I just wanted to see what guilt would build in her absence of consequence. Weeks passed. She grew thinner, more distracted. Her laughter disappeared entirely. She began drinking at night, 1 glass, then 2. Sometimes I'd find her standing in the dark, just breathing, as if waiting for permission to collapse. I said nothing. I only watched. Observation became habit. Detachment became identity. There's a strange power in withholding forgiveness. People start to crave punishment just to feel seen. One evening she confronted me, not with anger, but with exhaustion. "I can't live like this," she said. Her voice cracked on the last word. "You're free to leave," I replied. She shook her head. "You know I won't." She was right. She had nowhere to go. Her friends were ours. Her life built on our money, our name, our image. Freedom terrified her more than my silence. The next morning, I made breakfast. Pancakes, fruit, coffee, the kind of meal I used to make when things were good. She entered the kitchen, eyes wary. "Why?" she asked. "No reason," I said. "Just thought you might like it." She stared at the table like it might explode. Then she sat, slowly, and began to eat. After a few bites, tears slipped down her face. "It's too late," she whispered. I didn't disagree. Later, I sent flowers to her office, white lilies, her favorite. The card read simply, "For nothing owed." That night, she didn't come home. When she returned the next morning, she was pale, shaken. "I stayed with a friend," she said. I nodded. "I thought you'd call," she added. "Why?" "Because you care." I met her gaze. "Do I?" She looked at me for a long time, then turned away. The sound of her footsteps down the hall was the loneliest noise I've ever heard. After that, she began to unravel faster. Her work suffered. She lost interest in everything. I started finding her things misplaced. Keys in the freezer, phone in the bathroom. She'd forget conversations, repeat herself. The woman who once controlled every room she entered now struggled to control her own hands. I should have felt pity. Instead, I felt curiosity. How far could someone fall before they asked for help from the person who destroyed them? One night she finally broke. "I can't do this anymore," she said, standing in the doorway of my study. Her makeup smeared, voice trembling. "Then stop," I said without looking up. "Stop what?" "Pretending." She stared at me, eyes wide. "You're cruel." I turned the page of my book. "I'm consistent." She left the next morning. No note. Just absence. The silence that followed was exquisite. For the first time in months, the house felt pure. No pretense, no performance, just stillness. I thought that was the end. But endings are rarely clean. 3 days later, I received an envelope. No return address. Inside, a photograph. Her, smiling, head on another man's shoulder. Taken recently. Printed deliberately. A message on the back. "Now you owe me nothing, too." I stared at it for a long time. It should have angered me. Instead, it fascinated me. Because even in rebellion, she played by my rules. She wanted me to see, to react, to feel, to acknowledge her existence. But I didn't. I burned the photograph, watched the paper curl and blacken. Ashes don't owe anything either. After I burned the photograph, the smell lingered, faint smoke, paper, the ghost of her face. I opened a window, but the air refused to move. It was as if the house had decided to keep her memory for itself. For the first time in months, I felt something that might have been exhaustion, or perhaps clarity. She was gone. I'd won. Or so I thought. The next morning, I found her keys on the kitchen counter. Neat, deliberate. A small, metallic punctuation mark at the end of a sentence we'd both rewritten too many times. No note, no message. Just absence, perfectly composed. I made coffee, sat at the table, and stared at the empty chair across from me. It felt like a stage after the audience leaves, the props still in place, the silence holding the shape of applause that never came. I wondered if she wanted me to chase her, to prove that despite everything, I still cared enough to follow. But she'd said it herself, she owed me nothing. And now, perhaps, neither did I. Days passed. The house remained unnaturally still. The kind of silence that hums, like a frequency only guilt can hear. I kept expecting a message, a call, a plea, something. Instead, there was nothing. The emptiness became ritual. Every morning, I made 2 cups of coffee and poured one down the sink. Every night, I left a light on in the hallway. Not out of hope, but habit. Detachment, once mastered, becomes indistinguishable from devotion. A week later, I received a call from her sister. "She's not answering," she said. "Do you know where she is?" I said I didn't. It wasn't a lie, not exactly. The pause on the other end was heavy, suspicious. "She sounded strange the last time we spoke. Tired. You didn't fight again, did you?" "No," I said. "We stopped fighting," she sighed. "I'll let you know if I hear anything." She hung up before I could ask her to. That night, I walked through the house again. It had begun to feel like a museum, everything intact, preserved, sterile. Only the faint traces of her remained. A hairbrush, a perfume bottle half empty, a scarf folded on the chair. Objects, not memories. I should have felt relief. Instead, there was only weight. Not grief, not guilt, just the dull gravity of consequence. I had wanted to test love without obligation. Now I was living in the results. 2 weeks later, I found her journal. It was hidden behind a drawer in her dressing table. A small, leather-bound thing, pages filled in her precise handwriting. I told myself I opened it out of curiosity, not longing. But the first sentence stripped that illusion away. "I think he's trying to erase me." Page after page, observations, fears, fragments of a woman trying to understand the man who had stopped being one. He looks at me like a mirror he's already broken. Sometimes, I think he wants me to disappear just so he can prove he never needed me. I dream about drowning. In silence. In him. I closed the book and sat in the dark for a long time. It wasn't guilt I felt, more like recognition. She had been studying me as I studied her. 2 scientists dissecting the same experiment from opposite sides of the glass. Neither of us survived the observation. I started seeing her everywhere. Not literally, not yet, but in fragments. A reflection in a shop window that vanished when I turned. A laugh in a restaurant that matched her pitch perfectly. Perfume on someone's coat in the elevator. I knew they weren't her, but the mind plays tricks when deprived of consequence. I began leaving the house again, just to see if the world still existed. It did. Indifferent, efficient, clean. People laughed, bought coffee, lived. I envied them. A month passed. Then 2. Then one evening, I came home and found a single envelope under the door. My name on the front, her handwriting unmistakable. Inside, a letter. Short, deliberate, every line carved with control. You wanted truth without love. You wanted proof that I could live without you. You were right. I owe you nothing. But you owe me your silence. No return address, no signature. Just that. I read it twice, then again. The paper smelled faintly of her perfume, or maybe I imagined it. I burned it too. The ashes joined the others. Everything ends in smoke eventually. After that, she became both absence and presence, a shadow in every room. I started talking to her when I was alone, quietly, almost politely. Not confessions, not apologies. Just statements. The lilies are dead, I'd say. Or, the garden's overgrown. Sometimes I'd hear my own voice echo back, as if the house had learned to answer. One evening, I invited a friend for dinner. The first guest in months. He commented on how quiet the place felt. "You need life in here," he said. "It's like a mausoleum." I smiled. "It's peaceful." He looked at me carefully. "You heard from her?" "No." "She's alive, though?" "I assume so." He frowned. "You don't sound sure." "I'm not required to be." He didn't stay for dessert. Later that night, I stood by the window with a glass of whiskey, watching the reflection of the empty room behind me. For a moment, I thought I saw movement, her shape, faint, standing by the doorway. I didn't turn. Instead, I whispered, "You said you owe me nothing." The reflection didn't move, didn't speak. It just faded, quietly, into the dark. I don't know how much time has passed since then. Weeks, maybe months. The days have lost structure. I still make 2 cups of coffee each morning. Still pour one away. Ritual is stronger than reason. Sometimes, late at night, I hear footsteps on the stairs, soft, deliberate. They stop outside my door. Then nothing. Maybe it's the house settling. Maybe it's memory. Maybe she came back. It doesn't matter anymore. I've learned that love, once stripped of obligation, becomes something else entirely, a form of haunting. You can destroy a person, erase them, unmake them in silence. But their absence will still sit across from you, sipping invisible coffee, reminding you of everything you proved and everything you lost. I keep her journal in my desk now. I haven't read it again. I don't need to. The last page remains unread, sealed by ash, by time, by fear. Sometimes I run my hand over the cover and imagine her voice. Soft, distant, still questioning. Who won? And I always think, no one.